Okay. Big red button number 2. Tammy, are you ready to do this?
We're ready to do this.
Let's rock and roll!
Love the music.
alive! Welcome back to Let's Solve the Universe, dear listener. Thank you for joining us today live on YouTube at some unpronounceable URL. But you can always find it at www.lstupodcast.com. I'm Elias Perunin. Thank you so much for joining us. Joining me today on the show is the one and only Tammy Vallieres, author of the Grow Your Hero program. She is a teacher. In fact, she's not just any teacher. She is a hero intelligence teacher. Tammy, welcome to the show.
Hero intelligence, grow your hero.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
So awesome.
And you've even got those superhero caricatures, too.
We do. I've got my own little superhero character right over here, and there's Michael. And this is the Grow Your Hero program. Yeah, so it's so much fun. We have to have our own avatar, right?
Oh, of course. I'm jealous of Michael because you got him all the chiseled abs and the chest and everything, and I'm like, I need one of those.
That's right. I said to Michael, if you're going to do this program together, you need your own superhero character. You need your own avatar. So he was all for it. And then he's like, this is so much fun. I said, the whole world needs one, right?
I bet he's having fun with that, with attaching that one to all his email to, his kid's school. I bet he's having fun with it.
Oh, I know he is. Yeah, he's loving it. He's like, thank you so much. This was so much fun. And we got them done actually for all the youth heroes across Canada when we launched Awaken Your Inner Hero. And so that's how it would initiate the avatars. So I'm so grateful. And then I had more fun with it, and I've been playing with all those avatars. So it's just been, because I'm a visual spatial learner and I'm artistic too. And my art, that is my play, right? Is coming up with these fun things.
Yeah, you just browsing around the website that you provided me, and just for reference, people can find that at subscribepage.com/growyourhero.
Or they could go to quest.growyourhero.com. It's a more direct, streamlined link.
Right, quest.growyourhero.com.
Right.
I love the fun, engaging content that you've posted, but before we get too ahead of ourselves, I do have to ask you about this idea of the hero intelligence teacher. One of the greatest taglines I think I've ever heard. Tell me about that. What is that?
It is. So I was doing a lot of personal development. I went to a workshop, and they said, you really need to, own your own brand and really know who you are. And reflective thinking. And I thought, who am I? Like, really, who am I? If I'm going to help people own who they are, I have to really stand in my own power and know who I am. So a hero intelligence teacher, you hear about multiple intelligences and, your genius and these things like that. But I thought, what makes me unique and different than anybody else? Like, what is my unique thumbprint? And what do I want to leave a legacy of as a teacher and in the classroom? And I thought, what I'm really good at and what makes me different than anybody else in the world and better at, because again, what do you do better than anybody else in the world, and then own that, is I truly believe there is a hero in every single person. And most especially in my classroom. When I show up to kindergarten masterclass, the first things out of my mouth is the hero in me sees the hero in you. And to my absolute core, I believe that. So it's not something it's not just something I'm saying. It is my truth. I truly believe that. And I teach from that point of perspective. I truly believe that there is a hero and our victim inside of us. And that's a choice of who shows up. So from that point of perspective, that's how I enter the classroom. And my whole concept in Kindergarten Masterclass is I'm only inviting your hero, right? All victims stay at the door, and together, right? The world needs your hero, and it's about growing their hero and helping them grow that belief system, that mental mindset, and in that confidence, and then working towards that. So that's my primary goal.
So instead of starting from that perspective of I can't do something or I'm not good at something, you're more focusing on here's what you can do, here's what you bring to the table. Is that right?
I love this. So what I say, we've got this scripted, but we didn't. I say, what are the attributes of a healthy hero? They have a positive mental mindset. They have a healthy body, and they have a beautiful heart. They give, right? They serve others. And when we're thinking about service, what can we serve? We can share our gifts, our jewels, our gems, our superpowers. And the whole concept for me with education is that I feel like we go through our whole academic, schooled year, all the way we graduate. I talk to teachers and I ask them, what's your superpower? And they're like dazed over, right? They don't have a clue. It's like the doe in headlights. And yet when I ask them, what's fish's superpower? They'll say, oh, swimming. And I'll say, okay, well, what's bird's superpower? And they'll say, oh, flying. And I'll say, okay, what's squirrels? And they're like climbing and so on. And they could name every animal's superpower. And in a habitat, study in school, if you didn't know that, you would get a failing grade. How do we make it all the way through school and all the way through our life, and we don't know our superpower? And I mean, quick. We should all know that question in an instant. Otherwise, we have not been educated properly, right?
Well, we end up, at least this was my experience going through school, I feel like I went through school for a long time and I knew what my victim was.
Right.
I knew what that perspective was, like growing up with being diagnosed with cerebral palsy. I mean, nowadays it'd probably be diagnosed with some sort of general neurological disorder. But growing up with that, being told, here's the 10 things in life that you definitely won't do, so never mind those. So, I feel like sometimes it's easy for us to go through school and from that perspective, learn what your victim is. But yeah, you never really get in touch with, it's like, what are you good at? What are your strengths? What's your inner hero? How do we focus on that?
And let's go dive deep, right?
Yeah.
You need to dive deep to find those real jewels and gems. If you think about mining, right, you go deep. And if we're just on the surface level, we don't ever really know our worth, our value, and that's directly connected to mental health, bullying, all the social and emotional issues that are happening in school. Because what are the two main issues? I talked about this on a Rogers television interview. What are the two biggest issues in school? Bullying and mental health. And to me, we know this, children who love themselves don't hurt themselves or others. So it all comes down to self-awareness, self-worth, self-love. That's the key. It's the doorway in. And that's where we need to start. And that's the foundation piece of what we should be cultivating in education.
I feel like you're turning education a little bit on its head here, because the sorts of ideas here, this idea of self-love, the inner awareness, those are usually ideas that I feel like are talked about in, like, the home is responsible for that, and the school system is responsible for just cramming knowledge into your head and making sure that you're able to, I don't know, go to enter the workforce or get to college or university. But this is a real different way of looking at things. How did you stumble upon this? Did you actively, I mean, you've gone to these different workshops, but like, how did this, I'm guessing this didn't just, pop out of your head one day and you had all the answers. How did you get to this point?
Well, that's an interesting story. And that was my wake up moment. So like you, I struggled through the school system really to know my worth and value. So that was the key thing. I didn't think I was smart. I shared with you, I'm dyslexic. I have a form of, I'm on the spectrum of dyslexia. And so I struggled in school and I was labeled as learning disabled, but I was also young entering school. I was still 3.5. So I was a year behind on top of learning different, right? Big picture learner. And I learned the big picture and then the details. So I went through my whole system knowing what I wasn't good at and not feeling good at and my genius wasn't taught in school. I went to college and discovered my genius. My superpower was psychology. So I took an elective course, stumbled into psychology, and was at 98%. And I had my prof ask me if I could tutor, because she's like, you're brilliant. I'm like, I think you've got me mixed up with someone. I'm not smart. Don't you know this? Like, my belief system was really grounded there. And so I started to realize that we all have a superpower. And I started to love the quote by Einstein, right? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will believe it's stupid its whole life, right? That was me. I believed that. And I continued on, and I became a teacher, as crazy as that is, because I struggled so much in the school system, but I had perseverance and determination, and I just kept plowing through. But I always felt like if somebody found out, like, I'm really not that smart, I felt like I was like this not very smart person in the system that I was teaching in, because the system that I grew up in didn't honor my genius and superpowers. So I was a teacher, but I was really sick, out of riches, in poverty. I didn't really have the self-love. And I had a dove hit my window on 11/11/11 while I was teaching my grade 5/6 class at the moment of silence. We had all my kids standing, and it was silent. And this dove just, boom, hit that window in that moment. And I literally was like it was so profound. And so I started being a mini detective and Googling all this, the message and meaning behind it. And what came out of that was 11 represented the vision, 22 offered vision plus action, and 33 offers guidance to the world. And if you look at number 33, it's a master number. Jesus died at 33. So I got really scared and spooked. But it started my world of just looking at things on a superficial level. And it started like that universal connection, really opened up to quantum physics and what's the bigger message here. And it started this journey to self-awareness and inward and upward. So that journey to really, a book came out of me called Jeffrey Finds His Way. And what that little story was is an angel from heaven's gates looking down and seeing children and schools and the earth in crisis. And this little angel looks to God, this utopian world, and says, why do children in earth school, why don't they shine bright like children in heaven, where all souls shine brightly? And that little book became my journey to help children around the world find their way and their why, their big why.
Wow. That's a hell of a journey.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey Finds His Way. So you have, that's one book that you've written. Now, am I correct? You've written a couple of books at this point?
Yeah, so that one I co-wrote with Susan Lucenti Rizzo. I wrote it at first. I wrote the whole book at first. It came out of me. I went to a writer's workshop. I didn't feel confident in my writing skills. So I partnered with her. And we built this entire social and emotional wellness program for a school in Delhi. It's currently in its 8th year, to help children with social and emotional support. And it's an assembly program. So every year, every month, we change the culture, climate, conversations of the community and of the school, operating from a place of oneness. So that was that journey. But I had done everything from we, that I was lost with my me. I hadn't really owned my hero intelligence. I didn't know that title or name. I didn't know my own brand, because everything I was doing was operating from the place of we. And I went into another book with Paula Morand, and it was called Dreaming Big, Being Bold. And when Paula said to me, Tammy, you're going to have to do your own chapter, not include anybody, I went, oh my gosh, I don't know how to operate just from me. She's like, well, you got to, because it's all about you. So that spiraled my inward journey to really figure out who's Tammy and what do I stand for, and on my own 2 feet, not with anybody else around me. So it really became the We Are, I Am movement, and really that journey of how can you step into becoming your hero and really share your superpowers if you don't know what that is specifically. If you think of Heroes United, they each have their own superpower. Superman can fly, and Spider-Man, can crawl and climb, and you've got Thor with his hammer, right? They each know what that is, and they each get called into action. So yes, we need to come together as a collective whole, but first you need to know who you are so you stand in that strength and power. And then the last book was Awaken Your Inner Hero, featuring 50 kid heroes across Canada and helping them really leverage and help other kids realize their superpowers and become a part of that journey of awakening. And some kids were full on their way, and some kids were just beginning to awaken.
Something struck me as I've been listening to you describe your journey with writing these books and coming up with this program. Speaking with you right now, it's obvious within a couple seconds that I'm talking with the real Tammy. It's like I just within 5-10 minutes of us talking here, I know what your mission and I know what your purpose is. It is so crystal clear. And it really dawns on me that with this process that you've gone through, which I think many people, even through their whole adult life, never get to this point, never get a chance to figure out who it is they are. And I love the fact that you were focusing on, let's start this early. Let's figure this out early so that we don't have to undo these battle wounds later on in life, because adults can be a little bit harder to deal with.
Right.
You know, adult learning can be a little bit tricky because in adult learning, we tend to focus on, okay, but what do I need right now so I can get back to work?
Well, there's a paradigm and there's a belief system and we start to buy into the big lie. And so what meant when I went on my journey, I went inward and upward. And that's a very different journey from inward and outward. And most people get their self-worth, their self-identity from what other people say. 15 years, start erasing, right? All those lies, all those beliefs that people had either put on me, labels, all what I was listening to social media, I literally cut that source off from myself. And all those old relationships that wanted to hold me stuck in that, I literally went into this solo, road less traveled journey to find my inner truth. And because I know in every cell in my body, and that's why you feel that authenticity, I know this is my purpose and my passion. You couldn't, like a dog with a bone, you could not get this out of me, get it away from me. It is why I was born, to come here and to help people find their way and their why. So again, my journey and my awakening has created the pathway, the program, and the compass points to help other people find their way. But I had to live that first through myself. It didn't come in it came out of me, not through me trying to figure out, like, mastermind. And it came to me in like puzzle pieces, little bits by bits, and through my own personal experiences. So that's why the authenticity is there. That's why I truly believe it. That's why I really had to find, who am I, and brand myself. Like, if you Google hero intelligence teacher, I had never heard of it before. I created that for myself because that's truly authentically who I believe. And the reason being why I chose hero is because, number one, I love stories. To me, stories are the root of who we are and how we learn. And number two, the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell is the one thing about the common language. We are all connected across age, race, denomination, abilities, all through this hero's journey. So I was looking for a common language that spoke to every soul and heart on a place of oneness and unity.
That's amazing. I love that metaphor of the puzzle pieces, of that this came to you through the form of puzzle pieces. As I've gone on through my own life, I can definitely relate to that idea of I'm finding out who I am, not through this giant analytical process. It really feels like as you've gone through this inward and upward process that you've, instead of doing kind of the method, instead of going through and saying, okay, we're going to just put a whole bunch of stuff on the whiteboard and try and connect the dots and, do this in a analytical way, you were really going inside and searching for what some people might call a soul, what some people might call your spirit, what some, depends, pick your wording for whatever you believe in. But I love that idea of the puzzle pieces that, along that journey, there were bits and pieces that came to you, and it didn't just all, it wasn't just one flash. And the reason I love that is because it makes it, I think for everybody who's listening, that means that self-realization is attainable.
Right. And I think, the two virtues, because I build everything on foundational work, right? Become so strong, mind, body, heart, that no wolf, no situation can blow you down. I love speaking in stories and fairy tales and personal biography stories and facts and fiction and all the fun and the playfulness, right, of that inner child exploration that heroes and superheroes take us to. But it brings me to the foundational work, like those brick by brick. When you think of the three little pigs, the pig that built his house out of the bricks, layer by layer, and foundationally it's strong. The framework, the foundation, it's not this tower that's up, it's out and it's wide, and every piece is built. And so for me, it's the virtues: perseverance, patience. Right? I had to be patient. And while I was building it, we sometimes want it. And that's the one thing we don't wait. We don't wait for the information. We don't wait to actualize it and to really digest it. We just want to get it out there and get it out quick. And if you wait, you can start to really put it to the test. And when you can test out your building, and when you know it's strong and it's in a sturdy foundation, you're not worried with ever wind, and you can hold strong and true to it. But if you build it too quick and you haven't really tested out the waters or through the 4 seasons of your life, and you really haven't actualized it, you can't speak with such conviction, and people will know the truth. They know truth when they hear it. So if you try to lie or try to pretend that you're something other than you are, or that you're trying to sell people on things, you're going to push them and shut them down right off. People know the truth. And for me, I was no different. I wanted to get it up and running, and I used to feel frustrated, like, how come nobody's listening? But it was because it's true. I hadn't really stepped in and owned my power, my brilliance. I didn't have the wisdom and the confidence in myself to really promote the program and really have all those pieces. It's like trying to sell a puzzle that you have all these missing pieces and you don't have the clarity yet. For me now, I can own it and I can fully embrace it and I can share it at a level where I'm not trying to sell on any level. I'm just trying to share my story.
You're sharing,
and help them.
Yeah, that's the key difference. You're owning it and embracing it and sharing it. It comes from a really genuine place. I love that quote of how come nobody is listening. I've felt that way so many times in my own life, trying to do all sorts of different things. And I want to take you just back to this idea of waiting versus putting it out there to try and figure out what it is you're putting out to the world. There's in the realm that I play in, which is software development, we're always under pressure to get, content out there as fast as we can. And I mean, nowadays it's, become a lot more acceptable to say, let's, instead of building things taking 6 months or a year to build a software product, you do 2 weeks and then you put something out and then you have a release next week and the week after. So you're continually building and iterating and releasing. How do you... It
pushes you to your head versus your heart too, right? And sometimes before the readiness is there.
Because what I was about to ask is how do you balance out that putting it out there versus the wait?
Here's the thing. There has been no pressure for me. Number one, I get all of my guidance intuitively. This program has come to me probably 3:00 in the morning. Almost everything would purge out of me. And I would write it like, it was like I puked all over a page. And I wasn't getting any sleep. It was like a newborn baby for 10 years. And I had to trust the process that it's not coming from me, it's coming through me, that I'm basically the messenger. And so and I had to trust that there's a master plan, there's a universal connection, there's a universal energy that's guiding me. And that's the same energy that's guiding each and every one of us. I'm just tapped in, tuned into it. So I had to trust the process. And if you try to force anything, if you think about a butterfly, right, a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, if you try to force that butterfly to come out and emerge before the readiness is there, what happens to the butterfly? You don't let the process really unfold. I look a lot to nature. I look at the 4 seasons. I don't see life as death. I see life as transformation. I also look to nature, the 4 seasons, right? I look to people, plants, and animals. You know, if you have polar bear and you put him in the desert, what would happen to polar bear? His spirit, he would die, right? So alignment is power. If you think about transplanting a plant, if you see a plant dying, you know that you transplant it and it starts to thrive. You know it's put in the right elements. And same with people. When they're in alignment with their soul's purpose, their calling, they come alive. So we're talking relationships, we're talking schooling, we're talking life. And one of the things that I'm really strong at is my multiple intelligence is existential. So the passion to learn about life and psychology and master teachers, and looking at all of the master teachers, not just one, but all of them, because they were all life teachers. You think about sports, you don't just look to one Olympic champion from one country and you think, well, you know, I can't learn from any other, you know, amazing runners from any other part of the world. I can only look for my country. It creates a very narrow mental mindset and perspective of. So my whole goal through all of this is to really be expansive and to allow the process and trust in the source more than I trust in myself. Because that rushed learning is why these programs don't have sustainability. They don't have scaffolding. They don't have longevity. They come in as a bandage, fix it, right? They just want to come in and fix it, really quick solution, and then it's gone. And it doesn't really sustain and it doesn't hold anybody. Like you'll get a bullying presentation that comes in, they'll do 1 hour for a year. Well, that's like giving somebody a healthy dish for 1 day and then expecting their body to be healthy and transformed through the rest of the year. So sustainability, perseverance, and persistence, as well as trusting in a bigger plan and a part of you that's bigger than your own knowing, and allowing that to unfold.
Right. That alignment is power. I like, again, the stories and the metaphors that you're able to weave. It's just, it describes it all so well. I love the metaphors and the stories that you use too, because as I'm listening to you, I think, you know, being more of a technical person, I find myself kind of more on the skeptic spectrum sometimes. But what I find is the way that you relate this, it's a fun and playful, but still serious way to discuss these different matters, but it disarms that skepticism and it disarms that initial gut reaction to say, well, that works for you, but it wouldn't work for me. That's the real thing I'm feeling.
My superpower is I am a great teacher. And that is my superpower, is teaching. So I use analogies, I use metaphors, I use many things that people can relate to in life. So, you know, one of the things that I did do is, and I've been having to learn this myself, because we're all learning and growing, right? That's how we learn contrast. You know, in order to understand hot, you need to understand cold. So you are victim versus our hero. We all have been the victim. We've all been the hero, right? It's just at different parts in our life. So they're all relatable. But one thing that was coming to me, because I went on a walk before I came here, and that's one of the ways that I find everything's downloads. And I was like, it's like my meditation. It's how information comes to me. So when I was on my walk, I thought about how I was going to explain things to you and what the plan was. And the lesson for me is about planning. Because if you don't have a plan in place, what happens? We can end up everywhere. If polar bear doesn't have a plan to get to the North Pole, right? He's going to end up anywhere in the world. And we know that anywhere in the world is not the right fit for him. Frog needs to be in the pond. So we need a plan. We need that big plan in place. But so, for example, I was walking in the forest and I thought, if I wanted to go organically and just, with curiosity, go into the forest and I want to go off course and organically live, right? Have adventure, curiosity, great. But what would happen if I didn't have a compass? And I went into a big forest. And if it was the winter time, right? Different seasons of our life. If I went into that off course and I went without a compass, what would happen to me? We know many tragedy stories where people go off course in the forest, hunting, walks, nature, wherever, and they can't find their way back. And so if you think about what I'm trying to do with helping people find their way and their why, is because if you don't have your compass points and you don't have somebody guiding you, then you're going to end up in a life or in a bad place where you are lost and you don't know. You've gone so far in the wrong direction, you don't know how to get back. And so in school, we give them an ocean of information, but we don't help them find a plan and have a program for them making sense of school and having it connect to their life, building a life, because isn't that ultimately what we're helping them to do? So you talked about, really changing education, and isn't that the piece at home? Well, how can you really teach children and help them step into who they were meant to be and find a job and career, and not teach them about themselves and really help them create that master plan about life? Because that's why children are, suicides and mental health and bullying, because they don't understand. We're not helping to ground them. So I always say, head in the clouds, feet on the ground. We need the balance of both. And it's so my program, that's a lead into my plan in the program that I teach, and my purpose and passion is the Compass of Life Points. It gives children, the school, a collective whole, a plan. So it starts with Oliver the Dreamer, because everything first starts in our mind. We have to dream about where it is we want to go, because we are the masters and creators of our life. So first you have to envision, where do I want to go? What's true and feels true and authentic to me? And I start with your core virtues and values and your belief systems. What do you really truly want? And fish's plan is going to look very different than polar bears and camel's plan. And I like using analogies because it really is true. And you wouldn't want to mix those three plans up because that would be, disastrous. So I start with A for attitude, because whatever your attitude is, your attitude determines your altitude. And it also determines your success or failure. So B is your behavior, becoming the best you can be, right? Awakening your inner hero. C is choices. We all have a choice. Are we going to navigate from our dark or our light, our hero or our victim? And D is discover your diamonds. Are you going to be digging deep for your diamonds, or are you going to be focused on all the dark, all the things that you're not good at, like you talked about in school? And then E stands for energy, your emotions. So we know if you're on the quantum scale of high vibrational emotions, you're going to attract what you think and feel comes about. And if you're on the lower end of the vibrational frequency, you're going to attract that. Because what I think about, feel about, comes about. So it's cause and effect. It's all, Maslow's hierarchy. Everything is quantum physics. Everything is related to, we're all energy. So what energy are we bringing into the world? And then that determines your F, your future. And the focus on what we are one. So focus, frequency, flow state. So really getting our life into that focus, flow state, and having a plan and a program in place where we can start to go and navigate to that best life.
Now, what happens if a child we develop this plan for a child, they figure out their desires, they figure out their ambitions, but that for some reason conflicts with what their family thinks is best for them? Have you ever run into that?
Here's the thing. there is the component that there is the I am and the we are, right? We have to be mindful of being in alignment with that. That's why we have to change the culture, climate, conversations, self, others, community, world, and within our community. So it really, truly is how it started with me was first doing it with myself. I was learning all this higher level thinking and learning, really complicated psychology, personal life and growth and development. And then I was for my grade 5-6 class. And I was seeing the transformations happen in my classroom. But when we went out into the playground, there was a disconnect. They were not in alignment with what our classroom was. So then that's where I said, well, we can't just stop in my classroom. We have to go into the community. So that's what started the journey of the Compassionate Crew program for the entire school and the assembly where the whole school was on the same page. Then I said, well, if we get this whole school looking and feeling amazing, we can't just do that for the school. We have to do it for the province. And then it moved into the country. And then it went to, well, why not the world, right? Let's get us all on the same page. And we couldn't be more at the more divine time right now when the whole world has come together. So my whole program is Healthy People, Healthy Planet. And, it's healthy me, healthy we. So again, this whole concept of we are and focusing on what are we all, if we look at our oneness, what is that? One human race, one planet, people, plants, animals, we are all interconnected. Air, earth, water, fire is the sun energy. So and right now this virus has brought us more together with that global goal in mind to actually shift and awaken this point of perspective. I said, there's over 7 billion people on the planet. Imagine if we just did one thing at one time together, like all of us go and pick up garbage, 7 billion pieces of garbage in an instant like that. So I brought in the story of the starfish, right? And where does it come down to? Children. Children have the visualization, the imagination, the believability, and the faith, right? They do. They have that. Adults don't. That's the story of the starfish. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't. No, fill me in.
So there's a little boy or a little girl, however the story goes, that's walking on the shore, the ocean shore. And she's throwing these starfish into the water. And an older gentleman comes by and he says, young girl, what are you doing? And she says, well, I'm trying to help these starfish. They're going to dry up and they're not going to be able to survive. And he goes, well, honestly, that's a waste of time. Like if you look around, you're never, ever going to be able to help this cause. Like it's massive. And she picks up the one starfish and says, well, I just made a difference to this one. And she throws it in the water. So the adult mental mindset, we've already been conditioned that we can't make a difference. So we shut down. But children don't have that believability. They don't believe that they can't make a difference. So they start. And imagine if we all, for one moment, started to think like children. And we all, 7 billion of us, picked up a starfish. And at the same time, threw it in. That's only one starfish, one thing. And we can make a transformational difference. That's how we move mountains. But we have to come together as a mental mindset and as humanity as one.
Is your eventual dream here that we can transform children in a way that once they get to teenage years and adulthood, they're not constrained by being shut down. They're not constrained in their thinking, that they maintain that strong sense of purpose, strong sense of self throughout their adult years so that we don't have to continue to...
The cycle.
We don't have to continue this cycle.
Right. And so it's at a level of top down, bottom up. We have to be educating the educators and teachers and parents. But at the same time, we have to be doing this so that we can meet in the middle and that transformation peak can happen. So my dream in my heart is creating heaven here on earth. That little book I wrote, Jeffrey Finds His Way, was about creating heaven here on earth. Just imagine, we all have gifts we could share. We all could do something in the world. Imagine if the whole world at one point, and we've never been closer to that dream being actualized than right here, right now. So, my dream in my heart? What's the dream in everybody else's heart, right? I champion you all to think about that. What's your superpower and what's your genius? And if we all shared that right here, right now, and we started to focus and take this time, this sacred time right now, because the world is shut down and there's been never a more opportune time to really go quiet, go inward and dive deep and really ask yourself, what is my big why? And what is the pathway I want to re-enter and re-emerge into the world after all of that dust has settled?
It is a huge opportunity. COVID is definitely scary, but it's also been the first opportunity in a very long time that we as a species can come together and band around a common cause. I think personally, I've never had more of a chance to do self-reflection than in this period. It's just been incredible. I'm excited to see the other end of it, just because human ingenuity knows no bounds. And the world that we're going to enter into after COVID is all said and done is going to be a very exciting one. And I mean, at the same time, with all of the work that you're doing and reaching all these children, man, there's going to be, the future is bright. I'm pumped. This is going to be an awesome future for everybody.
I believe it is too. And honestly, it's all about partnership. I didn't make it here on my own, but I had to figure out my own self, right? But I didn't make it here on my own. I've been partnered with amazing people all along the way. Michael's one of them with the Grow Your Hero. And he saw the vast, massive information and the Disney world of content and curriculum that was supporting this school for 8 years, and all the work that I was doing in kindergarten masterclass with these little children. I would see them as master teachers. I never spoke down to them. I always spoke up to them like they were the superintendent, like honored their spirit and soul. And so that's who showed up. And Michael was so, impressed and so bewildered by it all. He would sometimes take the Eugene and go, oh my God, like I'm overwhelmed, Tammy. Took him like months to really grasp the magnitude and all the characters and content. But he was so focused and driven and motivated to help me take all of that and bring it into a form and place like the online quest, right? quest.growyourhero.com, because that was one way. He said, well, you can't just selfishly keep it at this school. How do you now take this incredible program, your life's body of work, and how do you share it with the world? And my biggest thing is I've never made a cent from any of this, right? But at some point then that compromises me, and I can't go further if I don't have any funds or resources myself. So my whole concept was affordability, available to everyone and affordable to everyone. So I wanted to make it available, right? And how do you do that? It had to be put in some type of an online quest and platform. And all of a sudden, we did our last tapings at St. Patrick's Day, and we were cut off. Like we had to go in social isolation. And then that online course got up and running, available right when the world shut down and went online. It was, talk about divine timing, like 15 years worth of bodies of work, right? Gone into that moment where I could actually now go and talk about it, do interviews. And I started this live TV, world's largest classroom, where I started to connect with other global master teachers from around the world, from South America and Australia and the UK and the United States. And we were all starting to come out and come together and find one another through this Genius U platform, because we all see the vision and we all see the opportunity to reimagine education at the end of all of this.
And the education system, in my not so humble opinion, needs a bit of a reimagining. I'm speaking from the college and the university world, having just finished doing a few lectures there. But this virus gives us one of the greatest opportunities I think we've ever seen to reform the education system for the better.
Absolutely. I wanted to share with you, because I lead with this usually, is if you've ever heard of the study, NASA did a study, and they did this longitudinal study. They were looking for geniuses. And they were thinking, how are we going to find geniuses? Because in NASA, I mean, they need people who think outside the box, right? So they came up with this test. Then, and they thought, you know what, this test is easy enough for 4 and 5-year-olds to do. So they found 1,600 4 and 5-year-olds, and they tested them, and they wanted to test their genius level and capacity. Do you want to know percentage when they tested 1,600 4 and 5-year-olds? How many of them proved to be geniuses?
I'm going to be super optimistic and say 100.
Close, 98.
Holy.
So 98% of 4 and 5-year-olds showed up as genius level. When they tested them at age 10, what do you think those results were? Do you think they were the same or they dropped?
At 10 years old?
Yes.
I'm going to guess they took a bit of a drop and go down to maybe 75.
So no, they good guess. But again, now they've been schooled, right? They're 10 years old, drop down to 30% genius.
Whoa.
This is the same 1,600 children. So at 4 and 5, they were at 98. 10 years old, they're at 30. What do you think at 15 they drop to?
I'm going to guess less than 10.
So 12. And by age 30, 2%.
Whoa.
That same study. George Land said it was the most important and powerful study he has ever done to date in NASA. So this is NASA. This is a longitudinal study. And this is testing what happens when they go through life and through school. And so I had Dr. Lance on my show. He is the top of the tree. You can't get better, higher schooling and more letters and credentials behind his name than him. And he said, the difference between schooling and education is massive. And one of the examples he talked about was he was setting up a workshop, and he had a desk at the back, and he had all these different things there. And this young boy came in and he was like, oh, this isn't going to work. And he runs out into the forest. He comes back with all this stuff, and he literally transforms this desk into a kitchen. And Dr. Lance said, wow, you must not have done very well in school. And he goes, how did you know? He's like, I hated school and school hated me. And he's like, well, he goes, because there was a clue. He says, when I looked at that desk, he says, I could have looked at it for 1,000 years and all I would have saw was what? He goes, a desk? He's like, yeah. He goes, I was schooled. He goes, you, on the other hand, were educated. He says, you didn't look at that desk and see a desk. You looked at that desk and saw what? He goes, a kitchen? He goes, right. That's the difference between education and schooling. And another comparison I wanted to share is we were going out for a walk in nature. I was walking with another teacher, and she saw a student, and she was like, oh my God, I'm so bored. And I said, you know what? I said, interesting that you say that. I said, pick up a rock. I picked up a rock and I held that rock in my hand. And I said, I wonder if you could help me figure out many different ways of how we could use this rock. So I just started to play with him. So I said to him, if I'm holding the rock, I'm the speaker and you're the listener. And if you're holding the rock, you're the speaker, I'm the listener. Then I said, I wonder, I could draw with this rock a powerful, positive messages in the world right now when the world needs it. And then I said, I wonder if I could take this rock and do what with it at the water. He goes, skip it? I said, absolutely. And then I said to him, I wonder if we could make it into a pet rock and give him a name and give him a mission. And we just started to go back and forth with all these amazing things with this rock. And I literally picked it up. Now, if he was educated, that child would never say utter the words, I'm bored. But when we're schooled, you could be a 30-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 5-year-old, and probably not a 5-year-old because they're still at genius, but a 10-year-old and be bored, completely bored. So what do you want for your child? Do you want them to be schooled and they don't know how to think for themselves? They're passive learners. Or do you want them to be educated where they start to tap into their genius, their imagination, their curiosity, and can make anything out of a rock? I go every day to kindergarten to learn how to unschool myself and become educated by my 4 and 5-year-olds. And that's why I can pick up a rock and I could come up with 100 ways to have a blast with it.
My neighbor had a really awesome saying when I was a kid, and I think she got this. I want to say it was from Mark Twain, but she would always say to me, don't let school get in the way of your education. And that's something I've always tried to keep in mind and live by, because a lot of these stories are also resonating. School just did not. I did well in school. I learned how to game the mark system, but I wouldn't say that school was something that I look back on and go, ooh, yay, that was a lot of fun.
Right. And school should be fun because we're naturally inquisitive. We're natural born learners. We want to learn. But when school starts to teach to the test and starts to teach for the mark, you rob children of the directional piece of what learning and growing is all about. It needs to be fun and engaging and playful and inquisitive and get curious. And, I take marks right off the table, and I'm blessed because I'm in kindergarten, but there's no way. And I'll tell you that right now, I could go back now and have to teach in the regular system. It would be the death of my spirit. I can't do it.
Yeah, it's been tricky. I find I struggle with that so the university teaching that I do is at the master's level, and at that level, they're always asking, but what do we need to do in order to get the mark? And I'm always saying to them, like, chill, don't worry about the mark. If you submit stuff and you learn and you make mistakes, I want you to make mistakes here. That's good. Like, make them here so that you learn, so that when you're in the workforce and when you're contributing to the world, oh, I have this experience to avoid doing whatever thing that I wasn't supposed to do. It's like, these are opportunities for you to grow and learn. Never mind the mark. You're in a master's program. You're smart. Like, exactly. You'll be fine.
Master's program is beautiful because you really are building it into passion projects. That literally should be their master, is what they're passionate about and aligning with their purpose and their passion. And that is an inner journey. I mean, how many people are doing it because their dad wanted them to? There's that inward and then outward versus inward and upward. Really, those passion projects is what we should be teaching children from the very youngest of ages. And like I say, right now, the world is our classroom. Everything is our classroom right now. It's not restricted to 4 walls and a teacher. We're all teachers. We're all students. We're all learners. So if we start to erase those walls, those confines and those lines, we could start making life our largest classroom. And that's what I'm doing with our live TV. And it's just been a blast.
I bet it has been. I love the idea that we're now getting away from just saying, okay, I feel like for a long time, the school system has been set up really to produce workers or people that can work on an assembly line or can just integrate into the workforce and do a thing. But now that I feel like now that we're past the point where the whole world's not going to war every 5 minutes, because now we have free trade and we can actually, travel, and we've realized that that's better than knocking 7 bells out of each other, that the school system really hasn't had a chance to catch up. And we've defaulted to what we've always done because, well, it's the easiest to measure, I guess. I don't know. Right. But even then, I go back to when I'm marking my master's students' papers and assignments, and I've said I've not made a secret about this to my students, and I'll publicly say it. It's, if I get 8 different submissions from 8 different groups, that's not an apples to apples comparison ever, even if it's the same content. I'll give them the same general data to start with, like to set the stage. I'm saying, here's some data, do an analysis of it. You would think that with one set of data, there would be one interpretation, right? I get 8 different interpretations. I get 8 different ways that this paper was done. It's not an apples to apples comparison. So why are we assigning a grade in the first place?
Absolutely. And what grade does is, I talked about, many stories, but to me, what happens is when you start giving a grade, you lose the intrinsic. It becomes external versus internal. And it becomes I have to versus I want to. And right off of that, you start to lose your way in your motivation, your inspiration. And so we literally fog children over, and they stop learning and tapping into that intrinsic navigational system, which is extremely dangerous, because we tune ourselves out and we start listening to everybody else. And that's how we lose our spirit, we lose our nectar, our zest for life. It's how we lose our passion, and we start to become robotic. We become passive learners instead of active, engaged teachers and students of life, right? And the way we learn is by teaching. So one of the things I always say in my kindergarten classroom, we are all students and we are all teachers. Because here's what I know. You tell me and I forget. You show me and I remember. I understand. So stories, children will remain, or all of us, people remember stories up to 90 to 95%. Facts, they forget. They will remember facts 5 to 10%. If they're a passive learner and they're the listener and they're the student, they will remember 5 to 10%. But if they're the teacher, they remember 90 to 95%. So how are you going to teach them something? So they're the student first. But if you really truly want them to learn it, they have to then interpret it, develop it, own it, and then deliver it. And that's how learning happens. And if that's not happening, it's not about a letter grade. They will remember the facts, put on the test, and then you ask them a month later if they forget it. But they will remember a story. A story will remember. They will remember it in their heads and hearts for a lifetime. You remember stories and you remember songs. You can think back of a time when you were young and a song was playing and you know who you were playing with, who you had a crush on, any of those things. What was happening in your life? Same with stories. So if you're not teaching with stories and allowing them to teach others, you massively impacting the learning and the success in the classroom.
I also, expanding on that too, it also strikes me that when we apply so much emphasis on that letter grade or that numeric grade, whatever the grade is, we say that that's implicitly tied to this idea that in order to get that grade, you have to get the right answer. That
right.
This is your one. I remember just being on so many tests and assignments and whatnot, and just saying, "Oh crap! I need to if I get this wrong, I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing." And you sort of lose your way in that way too, because you don't have that opportunity to make mistakes. You don't have that opportunity to, do something maybe the complete incorrect way and find out, there's a better way to do it.
My concern with that too, Elias, is because here's the problem too. I'm dyslexic, so I could think of 15 different ways to answer that. So what happens is when you're looking for a factor, one point of perspective, I could get it wrong on the test because I was thinking of all those other ways, and I didn't get that one way that obvious linear organized goal learning style would come up with, because my brain will think of many different ways, not the traditional or the typical way, but my brain, because I am a big picture learner, thinks of all the different ways. So those multiple choices I did poorly on. Does that measure my intelligence or my failure? So when they tested me on there, I came across as learning disabled. When I became very passionate about learning styles, I realized, oh my God, I had so many different answers that's why they labeled me disabled, because I wasn't able to land exactly where they wanted me because I was that big picture learner. And that was my genius, that Einstein. We don't want to cultivate these thinkers, free thinkers on their own. We want to create those followers, those passive learners. And so we position them there. We don't want them to argue their points. We don't want to hear what they fully have to say. We want to shut that down. We don't empower children, elevate them, motivate them, right? It's my classroom. You're going to sit and you're going to listen, and you're not going to debate me. I challenge that. I welcome those learners. I see those little stallions and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need you as one of my leaders because I see your brilliance. And those teachers, those are usually the kids that are the behavioral kids because they're always trying to break down the system. They're trying to break down the rules. And for me, oh my God, I love them. That's why they're the little bad wolves. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a free thinker. I got a little leader here. But I don't let them lead recklessly. If you're going to lead with me, you lead with responsibility. It was like Thor and that hammer. You're going to lead. His father gave him the power, but only when he was responsible with that power. So I say to my little students, yes, my mighty master teachers, my leaders, first you listen, and then I give you that power. Because we lead by example, not by our words, and we lead with kindness. I'm looking for kind leaders, compassionate leaders, and heartfelt leaders, right? That don't dominate. So again, you're not going to abuse that power. So of course, we don't give a kid a vehicle without teaching them how to be responsible. We don't give them tools to build a house that they're going to destroy and hurt themselves. We have to help them. We model first and then we empower.
So really, we're guiding them on their journey. We're helping them figure out how to be those leaders, how to be good independent thinkers. It's not our job to hammer information into their heads. It's our job to really help guide their education, not be the ones that just say, "Here, memorize some facts and regurgitate it on the test."
And how to think for themselves. Look at what happened with Hitler, right? We just followed the leader, but were we really following our moral compass? And there was a massive amount of people that could have overtaken him, but they just blindly followed. There's been so many different ways where when you don't have people who know how to stand up for what's right versus wrong, and there's a powerful leader in place that's not leading well with virtues or values or the compassion for the world, for humanity, then that's not the right leader. Why do we follow? We do because we've been trained how to be quiet and shut down and just follow and not think for ourselves. Just follow the leader, even if we're following the herd off the cliff. And that's not what we want. In children and educating, that's the difference between education and schooling again.
Right. So cultivating these leaders, I really love that idea, and cultivate and helping them to lead responsibly. Right. That's a key factor because in thinking back to my own school experience and a lot of the kids that had behavioral problems, they were all, like, looking back on them, they all had that thinking outside the box capability, and just had that opportunity to say, you know what, let's go to the root cause here. What's actually going on? Because 10 times out of 10, that was always a symptom of something else. There's something else at play here that we really need to get down to. And it's because you think, you and I are both psychology people. I mean, I'm more computer science. I dabble in psychology a little bit, economics. But we do something either to get some reward or to avoid some sort of punishment. We never do something just because whatever.
Right.
So it's what's the root cause? What's going on? What is driving that behavior?
Absolutely. And honestly, again, that's if you start to follow it all the way down, we all want to be good. We all want to share our gifts. It's what happens that starts to dim our light, right? That starts to, rob us of our confidence and our inner belief. But it's all those outside voices. It's all the media. It's all the teachers. It's the letter grades. It's the labels. It's all of that big lie, right? The big lie. And we have to, like mud, get it off of us and really start to reimagine and revision and reflect on truly who we are. And I'm not that learning disabled child. I'm not that person anymore. And I'm no longer going to tell that story, because there's no part of me that buys that story anymore. And nor am I going to sell it, right? I don't buy into my victim. It's like I squash that victim as fast as I can. It's like, that is not your story anymore. You are not that poor girl. You are this strong, mighty, empowered leader, and you are here to bring and draw that out into children. So it's responsible leadership, and it's doing it in a responsible way and allowing that process to happen. But so what I say to them, I said, what does kindergarten masterclass look like? Sound like, feel like, act like, and think like. That's what we're doing here. No wolves allowed. Our victim and our wolf is at the door, and our star that you are comes to masterclass, because I don't teach wolves, because I know that it's a choice. And your wolf self, just like my wolf self, is not welcome. This is the safe place. It's the safe learning zone, and we all need to act a certain way and respect this sacred circle that we're all coming together to become our best and to empower and support each other.
That's a powerful way to do it. That's I'm getting a little bit of chills down my spine just hearing you describe this methodology. I feel like I love getting to talk with teachers that have a completely different take on the education system, because I'm just like, you're going to be the ones that help rebuild this whole thing. We got some work to do, but this is, we've got a good future ahead of us when it comes to education. We're going to make this work.
We do. And I'm going to just do something fun with you and just bring the fun into the classroom. So the first thing I do is I say, we're going to start on a blank page, like a white, clean slate on how to do that. And within 2 seconds, I've had over 33 kindergarten kids, 22 boys, all types of behaviors. And I ring this bell, and in 2 seconds, it's silent. And I'm talking silent. And I could take 2 of my kindergarten classes, put them together in a gym, and again, ring this bell, and in 2 seconds, silent, with over 60 kindergarten kids. So it's they, and I say to them, be still. That's it. And who wants to be my master teacher? Every single one of them, because they are driven by the power and the opportunity to lead. They are starving for leadership. They are starving for that role. So this is what I do. And I ground them. And at that point, say, welcome to master class. And it doesn't matter what happened before. We're on a fresh new page. We're starting new, and we get to show up as the star that we are. We get to start to script that. So there's nobody who comes in, teacher can't come in and start to say, he's not allowed. This is my sacred time with them for 50 minutes. I'm speaking to their hero. And then I do something like this. I pick a card, and I always say, start with our I am message. The card doesn't pick, I don't pick the card picks us. And if you see there's a card that's obviously jumped out, right? So I pick it and I read it. And this one says, I am flexible. And it shows a moving van. I handle changes with eagerness and joy. And isn't that a beautiful message to leave off on? Is that the time that we're at right now is we have to be flexible. We have to be flexible. We have to be organic. We have to look at what's happening with the world right now and not be so rigid and stuck in our old ways. And we are moving. There's the moving van. We're moving into a new paradigm, a new way of living, a new normal. Everybody's been saying this. So are you going to be resistant? Are you going to struggle with that? Or are you going to start to reimagine in the most best and amazing possibilities? Or are you going to be focused on the dark and all the awful things? So everything, the potential is inside of us for both. There's always two sides of a coin. Are you focused on the problem or are you focused on the solution? And on the back, I handle change with eagerness and joy. Now, shouldn't that be our mantra moving forward? Like, if we were really want to reimagine this world and create heaven here on earth and create this utopia world where the plants and people and animals are all operating from a place of oneness and really as superheroes, sharing our genius and our abilities with the world, to handle it with eagerness and joy, what's the alternative? Misery, pain, and suffering? Like, the choice is ours. And you saw there couldn't have been a better card. And yet that card, I was just shuffling and it popped.
And it popped out. I think that is a beautiful, beautiful point to leave things off at. I love, oh my God. This has been an absolute wonderful, mind-blowing hour and a bit. I knew there was just something. When Michael meets somebody and I hear all about them, I know that he's met somebody good. This has been an incredible conversation, Tammy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If people want to find out more about what you are doing, where should they go on the internets?
So I'm on Facebook, Tammy Vallieres, or Tammy V, like Gary V. I've got the hero-intelligence.com. I've got the quest.growyourhero.com. So that's basically, or they can contact you if they want to reach out to me. But literally right now, I'm just letting my life like a a feather in the wind. I've just been blowing all over the place, trying to figure out where to land. And really support people who want to get behind children, like homeschooling. Everybody's really homeschooling right now. So ultimately, teachers, educators, I train teachers, parents, and children to literally grow their miraculous minds, bodies, and hearts so they can go out into the world and help make the world a better place. And ultimately, that is my dream in my heart that I've locked into, and I will never, let go of that. I've been on that quest for 15 years and I'm not, it's only getting higher and stronger with momentum. So this has been an honor to be interviewed by you. You're an amazing, host and navigating this. And the space to do this with the clarity and how you helped me to really shine this out so we could get the conversation into the world was really powerful. So thank you for having me. Michael.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I will make sure that all those links are in the show notes. So, dear listener, definitely check out the show notes. The video description on YouTube will also be updated with those links. Wow. We're going to have to talk again sometime soon, Tammy.
We're like kindred soulmates now, right? Like we're like friends for life.
Or something like that.
You can't go this deep in a conversation and not feel like you just met a new and great friend.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll talk to you, dear listener, next time on Let's Solve the Universe. Bye, y'all. Love you.